So friends, we go to the next module, which is on non-violent communication. This is by Marshall Rosenberg. He was a great master who propagated non-violent communication sometime in the year 1960. And he was a great psychologist. He did a lot of work he represented a lot of nations to bring peace between two nations as a mediator. And his book Nonviolent Communication is a great book, and I'll share a small video on nonviolent communication, and then maybe we can I'll talk a little bit more about it.
The purpose of nonviolent communication is to help you to do what you already know how to do. To connect in a way that makes natural giving possible. You all know that giving. You know how to do it. Remembering to stay with that quality of giving, moment by moment in any connection. But we also all know that it's easy to lose it. It's easy to lose that connection. So that instead of enjoying that quality of giving, which is possible every moment in every contact we have, in spite of how precious that is, we forget it. And instead of playing the game Making Life Wonderful, much of the time we play another game called Who's Right? Have you ever played that game? It's a game where everybody loses. So isn't this amazing that we all know about this quality of giving? It's possible every moment. We find that the richest thing to do. And much of our life, we end up playing Who's Right? Now, the game of Who's Right involves two of the most devious things human beings have ever come upon. One, punishment. Because if you're wrong in the game of Who's Right, then you deserve to suffer. No more punishment. You won't do it in your families. We'll get rid of it with criminals. It just makes things more violent. We'll find other ways to deal with other nations beside punishment. No more punishment. No more reward. It's the same game. Part of the game of Who's Right. If you're right, then you get rewarded. If you're wrong, you get punished. No more. No more. It's created enough violence on the planet. We've been educated for quite a while to make violence enjoyable. And educated in a way we can even be violent to our children. Watch a parent try to bring about change in the child. Say you're sorry. I'm sorry. You're not really sorry. I can see it. You're not really sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, I forgive you. Can you imagine a game like that? Can you imagine a parent responding to a child that way? And if a parent is going to do that to a child in their own family, what are they going to do to people from other cultures who behave in a way they don't appreciate? So of course you're going to have violence wherever you have this kind of thinking. It's learning how to go up to our head and think basically in terms of right and wrong, good and bad, normal, abnormal. You see, natural giving, anything we do in life that isn't coming out of that energy, we pay for it and everybody else pays for it. Anything we do out of fear of punishment, if we don't, everybody pays for it. Anything we do for a reward, everybody pays for it. Everything we do to make people like us, everybody pays for. Everything we do out of guilt, shame, duty, obligation, everybody pays for. That isn't what we were designed for. We were designed to enjoy giving. To give from the heart.
So, friends, we saw that Marshall Rosenberg. So he says that true giving is natural giving. Only you can only give when your cup is overflowing, and that's why meditation is a great tool. Because when you connect to yourself, when you connect to your inner being, to your inner source, as I always say, that your source is the ultimate resource. Then when your cup is overflowing, then you are giving. Then you don't feel sacrifice. It is a natural giving, right? And he says about we induct guilt, shame, punishment. Then how would they would only respond to in their life as they grow up in the same way. So we have to understand that it is not helping them. Einstein said we can't solve the problem from the same level of mind which created it. So every emotion is energy. If we try to if we try to correct the emotion with a negative charge, with the negative emotion, which is again corresponding with a we counter it with the corresponding negative charge, we actually enhance that charge, and we are precipitating more of a problem. However, if we encounter, say, anger with a positive charge, maybe love or compassion or maybe acceptance, then you can change, because now you are vibrating at a higher frequency. And as Einstein said, you cannot solve the problem from the same level of mind which created it. So you have to rise above it. You can change the negative charge with the positive charge. If you try to change the negative charge with the negative charge, you will enhance more of it. That's why violence cannot solve violence. Violence cannot heal violence. And that's why wars have never actually served a purpose. It has only created more tragedy, more trauma into the world. And then Marshall Rosenberg also talks about the root of all feeling is need. Behind every feeling, there's a need. There's an unmet need. There's a need which is not met. If somebody is angry, somebody is upset, somebody is shouting or complaining, so rather than looking at that complaint or anger or shout or complain, go behind that. Look, that is only a facade. Look behind it. What is the unmet need? They're only trying to tell you that there's some need which is unmet. So understand the language of need, rather than reacting to that emotional state of anger. Just understand what is they trying to tell you. It could be your children, your spouse, your parents, your friends. What are they trying to tell you? What is that unmet need? And whenever you want to tell them something, earlier somebody had asked the question, so say as request, not demand. A lot of times when we have some power over somebody, it could be against our servants or against our subordinates or against our children, we always say as demand. We always command. So, and the demand response is either submission or rebellion. And both are not good. Sometimes people wonder why my child became a rebellion. Why the child resents me so much. So that's how it has happened. The demand response is either submission or rebellion. So let's stop this game. He says, let's stop this game of right and wrong, good and bad, punishment, reward, guilt induction, shame, duties, casting duties and obligations on others. This all doesn't work. We pay for it and everybody's paying for it. The whole society is paying for it. And nowadays, he says, violence has become fun. And no movie is complete without a violence. No video, all the video games, the children are addicted to the violence. And your mind does not know the difference whether you are actually living that experience or actually you are just, it's a game. And that that you carry that, then you imbibe that emotions into your life, and then you respond, or you project that, or you express that emotion in the life situations. When you go out in the world, in the situations which you encounter, you come from the same emotion. So we have to understand what are the things we are actually watching, or programming into our subconscious mind, right? A lot of times we watch what kind of things, what kind of soap opera we watch before we go to sleep. Because whatever you put before you go to sleep, you're programming your subconscious mind for the next 8 hours for that. Your subconscious mind is non-judgmental. It cannot bifurcate, or it cannot. It has no. It cannot reflect on what to accept and what to reject. Whatever you feed, it will treat it as its truth, and it will work on it. So you can use your time before your sleep for programming it for with good emotions, good feelings, or with negative emotions, through the thing what you are watching, or to whatever emotions you go to sleep with. You may be fighting with your spouse and then go to sleep, or you may go with a feeling of love and care. So it's your choice. This is how we are programming our life, and we've been so much hooked, hacked, and hijacked with social media, that whatever, the moment you become addicted to some kind of program, the social media will actually show you more of those programs, because your smartphone is actually smarter than you. It knows exactly how to feed your emotion. And uh, uh, and you'll always pay. You are the product. You think you are looking at the product, but actually you are the product. And your smartphones and these the Facebook, or all the social medias knows what you are going to pay for. So it will give you more of that. It will project you more of that, and then you'll subscribe to that, or you'll pay for that, and then you'll see more of that. So friends, so you have to understand where you pay your attention to. Instead of observation, we evaluate by most of the time we evaluate in our relationship, we evaluate by criticism, analysis, judgment. We'll do too much of diagnosis. We call it the paralysis of analysis, so just and as I told you before, so just be non-judgmental, all situations are fundamentally neutral. How it is we who give it we assign a meaning, right or wrong, good or bad, and through that, the way you assign a meaning, you draw that reality into your life. And as J.D. Krishnamurti said, to observe without evaluating is the highest form of human intelligence. So a lot of times we need to express our feelings. So rather than expressing our emotion, so suppose if you're feeling angry towards somebody, so rather than expressing that anger, you can express the need behind that anger. So don't just express the feeling, but the need which is the cause of that feeling. Rather than express the feeling and not the expression of the feeling. Your anger is the expression of that need, or the expression of that feeling, of that need. So if you tell somebody that, okay, when you do this, I feel upset, it angers me, it irritates me, then that person will understand that. Rather than showing irritation, then the person will again counter it by further irritation, and then you trigger the problem, and negative charge will precipitate more of the negative charge, and then you do not solve the problem, right? You cannot solve the problem from the same level of mind which created it. And friends, there are three stages of emotion which I would like to share here. So first stage of emotion is emotional slavery. We think we are responsible for others' feelings, right? So how others feel, we take that responsibility, right? The second is rebellious stage, where say it's like an angry state. It is your problem. Whatever is happening in your life, it's your problem. I have nothing to do with it. I am not responsible for your feeling. You abandon that person. And abandonment is also pessimism in action. Opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. You are very indifferent to that. So you go to one extreme stand. First was one another extreme stage, extreme end of the spectrum, where we think we are responsible. We are responsible for everybody's feelings, or how others feel. Then we move to the second end of the spectrum, where we go to a rebellious stage, where that you are responsible for your problem, I'm not responsible, and we abandon that person or that emotion or that feeling, or or show our complete indifference. But the true emotional liberation, the third stage of emotion is that stage of emotional liberation, where you're responding to others with the need of a need where you're responding to other need out of compassion and not out of anger or guilt or shame or hatred or fear or resentment, or at the same time you're never suppressing your own needs. In responding to the need of others, you're not suppressing your own needs. Therefore it's more fulfilling to you and to others also. You express your need with a Santa Claus energy. Don't be too heavy about it, don't be too serious about it. Whatever you express your need with a very light energy. State very clearly what you need in what you need whatever you need, in a way that communicates that you and me are equally concerned, that we are all equally concerned with the needs of each other. So it includes the needs of the other person as our own. So it's important to express your need also. Sometimes we learn to sacrifice and express and suppress our own needs, and that leads to depression, that leads to emotional slavery. So three stages: emotional slavery, rebellious stage, or the emotional liberation. So we need to respond and to respect each other's emotional state and understand the need behind that emotion, right? And respond to that need, whether it is your need. As much you love others, you need to also self-love. Only when you know yourself can you know others. Only when you can investigate investigate what you are, can you know only then can you know who the others are. Otherwise it is impossible. If you don't know yourself, how do you know others? So in your relationship, only when you love yourself can you love others. So it is equally important. Self-love is equally important. You're hearing to Marshall Rosenberg, he said that 10% of the conflict is due to difference of opinion, and 90% is due to wrong tone of voice, including the conflicts between the nations. Most of the wars are fought for the ego, for the sake of ego. Some leader, some prime minister, some president, some king hurt the leader or the king of this other country, and it turned into a war. So 10% of conflict, only 10% of the conflict is due to the difference of opinion. 90% is due to the wrong tone of voice. Right? So friends, here I would also like to tell you about a lot of times we go through our emotional state, but we are that emotion looking for that cause. We are the grievance looking for a cause. Over a period of time, we are addicted to certain emotions, and then we become an emotion looking for a cause. We think that, oh, my relationship is, this person is bad, this my wife is like this, my children are like that, my friends are like this, my parents are like this. But actually you are like that, and now they are only an embodiment of what of your emotional state. They are only reflecting to you, they are only mirroring to you what you are. So you are, then people, places, things, situation may change, and now you will abandon one relationship, but then because you are because you are a grievance looking for a cause, now you will find another reason or another person whom you will feel aggrieved with, and then you will change, you will abandon that person with the relationship with that person. Now you will find the third person. But eventually you need to change your relationship, you need to change your attribute, your emotional state. And so you could be a joy looking for a cause. So it's all about you. So any resentment with people or situation is actually not about them. You make their unconscious state. If they are in the ego state, or if they are in the unconscious state, you don't need to identify with them. we have to understand that everybody is in their own state of evolution, right? Everybody is in the soul's journey. Somebody is a baby soul, somebody is a young soul, somebody is an adult soul, somebody is an old soul. If you think you're an old soul, but somebody is a young soul, they will act as per their own state of evolution. So you do not make their unconscious state your identity. The moment you identify with their unconscious state, and then you respond to that. So you don't need to react to it, right? Non-reaction is actually a way to dissolve ego, and not only your personal ego. If all of us become, it also dissolves the collective human ego. Non-reaction is a way to dissolve the collective human ego. That's what Buddha said. Nobody bites, nobody dies by the snake bite, but you die with the poison which actually spreads after the snake bite. That's what Buddha said. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So through our perception, the moment has happened, but the way you judge that event, that is the poison which will spread into you. Or if you judge that event as neutral, how you perceive that event, that depends whether you're spreading the poison or not. So Wayne Dyer said, there are no justified resentments. There are no justified resentments. So it's totally your choice to be casted by that resentment, or to be a prisoner of that resentment, or to choose freedom in your life. And the more you resist, the more it will persist in your life. Your resistance always hardens the shell of the ego. The more you resist, the more your ego will become stronger. The more you will harden, because you identify, oh, I am right, he is wrong, right? So more it will harden the shell of the ego. The more egoistic you will become. But the moment you accept the person the way he is or she is, you soften your ego, right? So, and also sometimes it is good to be silent. Sometimes it is good to not respond. Silence is a speech of a spiritual seeker. Sometimes you don't need to immediately react. Sometimes you may give time. You may be silent for 1 month, for 10 minutes or 1 hour, and then you can react once you are composed. If you're feeling angry, then it is okay to be silent. Silence is a speech of a spiritual seeker. It is the silence between the notes that actually make the music. So sometimes it is good to be silent, right? You came as a creator, not as a reactor. So you don't need to react every time, right? And the true responsibility when you're evolving, when the stage of evolution, the more you evolve, the more you become responsible for your beliefs, the thoughts, your emotions, your attitudes. And the responsibility means your ability to respond, right? Wayne Dyer said, nobody can make you unhappy without your consent, right? There are no justified resentments. Nobody can make you unhappy without your consent. So if it is to be, it's up to me. So it's totally your choice to be happy or not to be happy. And friends, ego implies unawareness. Every time you recognize this, your ego, every time you become aware of the ego, every time it is recognized, it is weakened. Buddha said, seeing is freeing. The moment you see that these patterns, these emotions, these unconscious behaviors in you, the very act of seeing it, the very act of observing it, actually you distance from it. Because you are the observer. The observer is you. What you are observing is not you. So every time it is recognized, it is weakened. So and then whatever resentment which is carried for a long time, it becomes a grievance. It started with a mood, then it turned into a habit over a period of time, or it turns into a pattern. Then it turns into after days or months or years, it turns into your state of being. Then it turns into your personality, right? So if you elongate it is not wrong to be upset, but it is wrong to stay upset. It is not wrong to be angry, but it's wrong to stay angry. If you elongate that period, that reflective time of that emotion for a long time, then it is the problem. Then it becomes hardwired into a subconscious pattern, right? So it's fine, we all get angry, we all get upset, we all, but then the moment you become aware of it, with the act of awareness, with the help of meditation or awareness, you can reduce the refractive period and go back to your true self, your true inner self of love, joy, happiness, and come back, and then go back again in the world and respond from that creative emotion, from that love based emotion, because you think always equal to your emotional state. When you're in a wrong emotional state, you even make the wrong choices, you respond in a wrong way. And friends, these grievances can actually, it's not just a personal grievance, this grievance can also be a collective grievance. Sometimes, like being an Indian, you may dislike a Pakistani. I mean, in our generation, we may not have any fight. We have no fight with any Pakistani. But because we know, we've been hardwired to believe that, India is an enemy, Pakistan is an enemy of India, or India is an enemy of Pakistan. The moment we think of any Pakistani, we feel anger towards that person, or we feel a grievance towards the whole nation. So collective grievance can survive for centuries in a psyche of a nation, or a tribe, or a community, or it could be a religion. If you think you're a Hindu, I don't like Muslim, or I don't like Christian, or it could be vice versa, So and this can lead to the cycle of endless violence. And the problem of this collective grievance is we do not even recognize it. Because it is so socially acceptable, because you move around within your own community, within the people of your own nation, that you think it is very normal and it is right. You don't even recognize it. But the truth is, we are all human beings, we are all spiritual beings to have a human experience. Maybe in your past life, you could be Pakistani. In your past life, you could be a man or a woman. In a past life, you could be a Hindu. And in this lifetime, if you're Hindu, maybe in your past life, you could be a Muslim. So from the soul's perspective, there is no religion. It is all man-made. There is no nation. It is all man-made. But in spite of that, because of the collective psyche, we carry the grievance or the resentment. And then we draw more of those relationships because of that charge, emotional charge, into our life. So we need to recognize that. And friends, then also we give a lot of self definitions, so we have to understand that the role we are playing, these are all temporary roles. Whether you are playing a role of a farmer or a trader or a doctor or a lawyer or an army officer or a boss or a police or anything, or a subordinate or a housewife, as an artist, as a performer, we are all playing these roles. We don't have to identify too serious with these roles. We are the role we are playing in this lifetime. So but the problem is, when you play these roles, we become so unconscious about these roles. So don't take your role so seriously. Be spontaneous, be lightheartedness, be joyful. We know that it is just my role. It is a temporary role. And so it could be anything. It could be a role of sometimes it could be a role of a customer. The moment you are a customer, you act very pricey. It could be an airline passenger. The moment you are an airline passenger, now you demand service. Or you go to a restaurant, now you demand all the service. Or if you're talking to a servant, then you change, all of a sudden your role changes. The moment you're meeting a senior politician, then all of a sudden you become very humble. So your role keeps on changing, depends on who is on the other side. So that is not true you. If you're truly humble, if you're truly loving, then you treat everybody as equals, right? So the more you identify with your respective roles, the more inauthentic the relationship becomes. So in order for relationship to be very authentic, you need to understand that nobody is inferior or superior. We have to understand that we all are equals. Whether it is treating your child or your parents or your friends or your boss or your senior politician, in the heart, we have to understand that we are all equals, right? And in this context, I would like to talk a little more about the parenthood. A lot of times, because we have power over our children, we actually use that. And the truth is, and sometimes we wonder, I love my child all through my life, and then why did my child hate me? Why does my child resent me? Because parenthood is a choice, it's a choice of either conscious suffering or conscious parenting. But most of the time, we are not doing conscious parenting. Because of unconscious parenting, we are actually suffering. Because it is a desire for every child to be treated equally, right? And so many times, when in the upbringing of the child, we inject so much of guilt, shame, and when they grow up, then they again project that same emotion towards you or towards the society. And so there are two types of attention. One is form and one is formlessness. The form is about doing. A lot of times you say, "Oh, I did so much for my children. I did so much for my child, but see how he turned out to be, and now how is he?" So form is always about doing, 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 but formlessness is about being. Is what how in the act of correcting a child all the time, or thinking that he has to improve or improve, you've been so much condemning or criticizing, being a critic of your child all the time, that you have forgotten to be being with your child, to have some happy moments, some joyful moments with your child, to make him feel good about himself. So 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 these are the two types of attention. One is form, and another is formlessness. Form is always about doing, doing, doing. And you did everything to give. You gave him the best education. You worked hard. You gave him the best house, everything. But you never were there for your child. So it's about being, or for your spouse, or for your parents. So form and formlessness. One is of doing, and another is being. And we are human being. Human is about form, it's about doing, but that's why we are called human being. Being is formlessness, being alert, being mindful, being completely in the present moment, where somebody needs your compassion, your care, your touch, that human touch, and that is what you need. So the longing for every child is to be recognized on the level of form, right? On the level of formlessness, not on the level of just form, not on the just the level of doing, but on the level of being. So the child, as I told you, the people will forget what you do for them, but they will never forget how you made them feel. What are the moments of the feeling? How did you make them feel during their upbringing? And that is what they will always remember. And especially for these millennial kids, you tell them what to do, not how to do, because they don't like to be micromanaged. They are super intelligent, they're super evolved, and they don't like to be in your constant scrutiny. They will learn more from what you do, not from what you tell them. So Ramdas said, if you think you're enlightened, spend 1 week with your family. So that is your true test. Your children will tell you, if you have a great relationship with children or with a spouse, then you know that you're truly enlightened, because they know exactly what you are, and they are only reflecting you what you are, right? So friends, this is what we need to learn, and that is how we can transform our relationship.